Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jasodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jamunatira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivājakacharya Astatarasi Srimad Divine Grace Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. This coming to the founder charge of Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivājakacharya Astatarasi Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Sanatama Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Sri Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Itai Gauravimanandi. All glories to the sum of the devotees. All glories to the sum of the devotees. All glories to the sum of the devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gaura. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padastaya Budale. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaura Vani Bachani Visesa Sinnavadi Pastata Chatayani. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nasta Praisha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevayam Bhagavati Utama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 26, entitled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. And today we're reading text number 19. Please repeat. Daivāt kṣubhita-dharmiṇyāṁ svasyāṁ yonau paraḥ, pumān, ādhatta, vīryam, sāsūta, mahat-tattvaṁ, hiraṇmayam, daivāt kṣubhita-dharmiṇyāṁ, svasyāṁ yonau pumān, ādhatta sāsūta, mahat-tattvaṁ hiraṇmayam, daivāt kṣubhita-dharmiṇyāṁ, svasyāṁ yonau pumān, ādhatta vīryam sāsūta, mahat-tattvaṁ hiraṇmayam, daivāt kṣubhita-dharmiṇyāṁ, svasyāṁ yonau pumān, ādhatta vīryam sāsūta, mahat-tattvaṁ hiraṇmayam, daivāt kṣubhita-dharmiṇyāṁ, svasyāṁ yonau pumān, ādhatta vīryam asūta, mahat-tattvaṁ hiraṇmayam, daivāt kṣubhita-dharmiṇyāṁ, svasyāṁ yonau pumān, ādhatta vīryam sāsūta, mahat-tattvaṁ hiraṇmayam, ladies. daivāt kṣubhita-dharmiṇyāṁ, svasyāṁ yonau pumān, ādhatta vīryam sāsūta, mahat-tattvaṁ hiraṇmayam, daivāt kṣubhita-dharmiṇyāṁ, daivāt, by the destiny of the conditioned souls. Kṣubhita, agitated. Dharmiṇyāṁ, whose equilibrium of the modes. Svasyāṁ, his own. Yonau, in the womb, material nature. Paraḥ pumān, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Ādhatta, impregnated. Vīryam, semen, his internal potency. She, material nature. Asūta, delivered. mahat-tattvam, the sum total of cosmic intelligence. Hiraṇmayam, known as Hiraṇmaya. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. After the Supreme Personality of Godhead impregnates material nature with His internal potency, material nature delivers the sum total of the cosmic intelligence, which is known as Hiraṇmaya. This takes place in material nature when she is agitated by the destinations of the conditioned souls. Please repeat. After the Supreme Personality of Godhead impregnates material nature with His internal potency, material nature delivers the sum total of the cosmic intelligence, which is known as Hiraṇmaya. This takes place in material nature when she is agitated by the destinations of the conditioned souls. Report. This impregnation of material nature is described in Bhagavad Gita 14, chapter, verse 3, 14.3. Material nature's primal factor is the mahat-tattva, or breeding source of all varieties. This part of material nature, which is called pradhan, as well as Brahman, is impregnated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead and delivers varieties of living entities. Material nature in this connection is called Brahman because it is a perverted reflection of the spiritual nature. It is described in the Vishnu Purana that the living entities belong to the spiritual nature. The potency of the Supreme Lord is spiritual, and the living entities, although they are marginal potency, are also spiritual. If the living entities were not spiritual, this description of impregnation by the Supreme Lord would not be applicable. The Supreme Lord does not put His semen into that which is not spiritual, but it is stated here that the Supreme Person puts His semen into material nature. This means that the living entities are spiritual by nature. After impregnation, material nature delivers all kinds of living entities, beginning from the greatest living creature, Lord Brahma, down to the insignificant ant, in all varieties of form. In Bhagavad Gita 14.4, material nature is clearly mentioned as sarvajonishu. This means that of all varieties of species, demigods, human beings, animals, birds, and beasts, whatever is manifested, material nature is the mother, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the seed-giving Father. Generally, it is experienced that the father gives life to the child, but the mother gives its body. Although the seed of life is given by the father, the body develops within the womb of the mother. Similarly, the living entities are impregnated into the womb of material nature. But the body, being supplied by material nature, takes on many different species and forms of life. The theory that the symptoms of life are manifest by the interaction of the 24 material elements is now supported here. The living force comes directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is completely spiritual. Therefore, no material scientific advancement can produce life. The living force comes from the spiritual world and has nothing to do with the interaction of the material elements. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmunitam Jena Tasmai Sigurema. Mukam Gurote Vachalam Pankam Langayate Girim Yagdipidam Mande Siguruntina Taranam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. So, Srila Prabhupada begins by quoting or mentioning the third verse of chapter 14, wherein the Lord says, Mamajonir mahat-Brahma, tasmin garbham dadamyaham, where the Lord explains that the total material substance, which is Brahman, as Prabhupada points out here, is that which which is the total substance, is impregnated by myself. I, Krishna. I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, as Prabhupada points out here. That the material elements are there, the mahat-tattva, or the pradhan, I should say. The pradhan is there, as Prabhupada makes that point. The pradhan is there, but when he impregnates the living entity and the time factor, it becomes mahat-tattva. In other words, it's undifferentiated initially in the pradhan, and then it becomes differentiated, or it takes on form when the Lord impregnates the living being and himself as the time factor. So this idea that this material nature is working independently is debunked by this statement of the Personality of Godhead. And as Prabhupada points out here in the purport, that this is the explanation of the world. It is a combination of kshetra and kshetragya, or the material energy, the elements, and the living beings. In other words, body and spirit, soul. It's by that combination that we see the different varieties that are there within the material creation. Prabhupada makes that point here. By impregnation of the Personality of Godhead, delivering different varieties of living entities are produced, and this is the answer to the question of where and how this creation comes about. Not that it's some accident or that all of a sudden something exploded and then voila, we have beautiful living beings. It doesn't make sense. But the living beings are there, the material nature is there, and but they're a reflection. Prabhupada makes that point also in the Bhagavad Gita, where he explains that this combination of material elements and the goings on that we see within the material world is simply a reflection, and it doesn't work on its own. The example is given of the energy and the energetic. The energy is there, material elements are there, but until the energetic initiates some action, it's dormant. There's nothing there. There's nothing happening. In other words, the energies are controlled by the energetic. They don't act independently, or they're not even equal. their quality may be the same, as we understand from the Vedic Shastras, that the living being also is eternal. The living beings are also, to some degree, knowledgeable. To some degree, there's some pleasure, but it's all energized by the powerhouse, or the personality of Godhead. Again, not that it's acting independently. The Lord himself has to come and initiate the whole process. Hang evasham eva gre. He explains in the Bhagavatam that it was I who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but I. And that is what you see now before you, is I, that same Supreme Personality of Godhead. And after the dissolution, when there's nothing, but there will still be I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna is there in the beginning, he's in the middle, and he's there in the end. But the material elements, they're also injected within the cosmos. Krishna, by his potencies, enters into the material cosmos, right? What is that verse? Yatamahanti bhutani. He enters within the cosmos. Those energies enter within the cosmos, as does he. But he's distinctly different from it. He doesn't become a part of it or conditioned to it as the conditioned souls are, as the minute particles are. He's not affected as we are. When we come in contact with this material energy, the living being becomes bewildered, thinking himself to be a part of it, and that we're meant to enjoy it, right? Aparayam itastonyam prakritim vidime param jivabhuta mahabaho yaedam daryate jagat. The living being, when he comes into this material nature, although he's of a superior energy, he comes in contact with this material world, and he begins to think that, let me exploit it. Let me exploit the resources of this material inferior nature, and become an independent enjoyer. It's not reality. The reality is that the personality of Godhead is initiating all of this that we see around us. It's by his energy, by his desire, by his energy, that the energetic, or that by the energetic, that the energy is able to perform anything. And the Bhagavatam explains that it's etavadeva jigyasam tattva jigyasanatmana. That anyone who's searching must search up to this point, both directly and indirectly. Whatever your motive is in understanding this material nature, one should understand that it's the personality of Godhead who's initiating all of this. It's by his potency that the creation is taking place. Prabhupada points out here that in the Vishnu Purana, the living entities belong to the spiritual nature. Right? The Vishnu Purana explains that, Vishnu Shakti Paraprokta, that the Supreme Lord Vishnu is spiritual. But there's also another spiritual energy, Kshetragya, the living being. He's also of a spiritual nature. But unfortunately, because of his minute status or condition, just being part and parcel, he becomes bewildered by the material energy and thinks that he can enjoy within this material world. but actually he's a spiritual particle. And Prabhupada points out here that if the living being were not spiritual, the description of impregnation by the Supreme Lord would not be applicable. Because the Lord, when he comes into this material energy, within this material creation, it's not that he becomes a part of it. He's distinctly separate from it, but he acts within this material creation by his different energies, and he impregnates the living beings. And it's not that he, again, becomes influenced as the conditioned souls are. As soon as we've come into contact with this material nature, due to our past activities, we have a certain form, we have a certain mentality. All of these things develop, and gradually the living being becomes conditioned more and more and more, and forgetting his true identity. In the Bhagavad Gita, again in the 14th chapter, in text number 4, Sarvajonishu is described that the living beings, murtaya sambhavantiya, that all species of life are made possible by birth in material nature. And that again, the Supreme Lord is the seed-giving Father. It's not that these things are happening separate, or they're some haphazard or some chaotic development or acts, or accidents. No. These things are very controlled, and by his arrangement, the living beings come into this world. They take on varieties of species and forms, demigods, human beings, animals, birds, beasts. Whatever are manifested, material nature is the mother. And the seed-giving Father, the Supreme Lord, gives life to that. Similarly, as Prabhupada points out here, the living entities are impregnated into the womb of material nature. But the body, being supplied by material nature, takes on many different species and forms of life. The theory that the symptoms of life are manifest by interaction of 24 material elements is not supported here. And the common example is of the scorpions. We've heard this example many a time, that the scorpion, it lays its eggs in the rice kernels, right, in the rice bag. And when it matures, the scorpions come out, and the theory is that the scorpions are produced by rice. But this is not reality. Similarly, the living beings are impregnated into material nature. Not that they're produced by material nature, but they're impregnated into material nature, and they take on different forms. Just again, as the scorpion, it lays its eggs, and the scorpion comes out when it matures. It's not produced by that material association. So it's very simple logic, but it becomes very complicated for the voidists and the impersonalists. It becomes very difficult how the spiritual energy can work within the material creation and yet not be a part of it. And this understanding is something that is is found there in the Vaishnava culture, this Vaishnava, the teachings of the great acharyas and mahajans. And it's their mission to teach that. There's a wonderful example given in the example of Srila Madhvacharya. Now, tomorrow is his appearance day. So I just wanted to mention a couple things about his life, which is very exemplary in helping us to understand this principle. There was one Brahmin, I think Madhyageha was his name, who was engaged in worshiping a Shiva lingam in Udupi. And he understood that Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he took this Shiva lingam as a representation of Parashuram and worshipped it. In the meantime, in the heavens, the demigods, headed by Lord Brahma, were disturbed that the Kali Yuga is being heavily influenced by impersonalism and voidism. And it was disturbing his sampradaya. So, what to do? They went to Lord Vishnu and they asked Lord Vishnu to please give us some relief, because this influence of voidism and Buddhism and the impersonalism of Shankara is destroying the sampradaya and is distorting the teachings of the Vedic acharyas. So Lord Vishnu looked around his audience here, all the demigods, and he saw Vayu. And he said, Vayu, you should take birth as a brahmana. You should go and preach the correct conclusion of the Vedic teachings and establish the Supreme Personality of Godhead, myself, as the Supreme Person. So Vayu took on this assignment, and this Madhyageha and his wife, does anyone remember his wife? I'll remember it at some point, but I can't remember his wife's name right now. But he and his wife, desiring to have a child, began to perform austerities just as Kasyapa and Aditi. So they drank milk for some 12 years. And their intent was to have a wonderful child who could spread the glories of the Personality of Godhead. So after 12 years, they decided, okay, let's now perform, because they weren't in the proper state of mind. They performed these austerities for some 12 years. And after the 12 years, they felt, okay, now we're ready. So they had this wonderful child, Vasudeva. And this child was recognized immediately. His great personality was immediately recognized, not only through his horoscope, as is Vedic culture, but even his activities as he gradually grew older and older. When he was just a small child, and he was still taking the milk of his mother, her breast milk. On one occasion, she went away. She had to tend to some household duties. And the child began to cry. And if I can remember this, the child began to cry, and his sister tried to calm him down, that don't worry, mother will be back shortly, but he kept on crying and he was very disturbed. How does the story go? Does anyone remember that particular pastime? It's really an incredible exhibition. Oh, I know what it was. His sister, finally, she didn't know what to do, so she ran to the place where her mother was, trying to bring her back. And in the meantime, Vasudeva, he was in the house, and he noticed a 40-kilo bag of grain that was intended for the cows, for the bull. So he crawled over to the 40-kilo bag and began to eat it, these grains that were intended for the bull. So he was eating and eating and eating, and when the mother and sister came back, he was sitting there with an empty bag, with a wonderful, serene look on his face. And the mother was chastising the daughter. How could you do this? He ate grains that were intended, that were raw grains, that were intended for a bull. Okay, so we'll just take this as his anuprashna ceremony. In other words, his grain ceremony. They accepted this as his grain ceremony, his first eating of grains. It was incredible. So this was just a small sampling of how he manifested his personality throughout his life. Later on, when he was a little bit older, the parents were with some other friends, and they were holding some kind of a celebration, and the child wandered away into the forest, as children do. They're sometimes independent and curious, they walk off. So the child walked off into the woods, and the parents, all of a sudden, everyone was looking, where's Vasudeva, where's Vasudeva, where's he gone? So they, in the next moment, a big bull came running down the road, and a full-grown bull with big horns and was making so many sounds. And as the bull passed, there was little Vasudeva holding on to the tail of the bull, and he was being dragged, and he was running here and there with a smile on his face, because he was so happy having this little exchange. So there's also another wonderful story about how on another occasion he again wanted to eat, and because he's an incarnation of, we understand, Hanuman and Bhima, he had a great appetite. So he asked his father, can you make something for us to eat? And the father said, no, I can't. I'm busy. I'm dealing with one Brahman who's at the door. He's fasting. And he wants payment for a bull, the bull that the family has. And I can't do anything. I can't help you. So he said, give me some tamarind seeds. So he was given a tamarind seed by the father, and from that tamarind seed, he created a whole meal. From those seeds, he was able to produce a very wonderful spread of food items. So this is all again an exhibition of how later on in his life it's revealed how he was very active in his preaching of daivāt philosophy. And his most important contribution was is described as the philosophy of difference. And that in that philosophy of difference, there were 5 main points of bhakti that he taught. And that was that the Supreme Lord and the living entities are independent. They're different. That the Supreme Lord and the mahat-tattva, material energy, are also different. That the living beings and material nature are different. And that the living beings and other living beings are also different. And that finally he taught the principle of common sense. And that is that even not only are sentient beings different, but also non-sentient or material things are also different. Just like when we look at a car, we don't see it as a toaster. There's a difference there. Their qualities are different. So he taught this principle of common sense. And he was very instrumental in defeating the impersonalist and Buddhist philosophies that were prevalent in India, that were disturbing the Vaishnava sampradayas. And again, this was, as we were mentioning here, that to teach this is the mission of all the acharyas, to help us to understand that there's a difference between the personality of Godhead and the material energy. There's a difference between the personality of Godhead. He was a great worshiper of baby Krishna. And there's a difference between the living beings and the personality of Godhead. So, and yet all of it is initiated by the personality of Godhead himself. So it's this idea that everything is happening independently, or that it's an accident, or it's just all one, doesn't make sense. When he disappeared at the end of his life, there's a very nice description of how he was sitting on his asana, and he was reading from the, I think it was the one of the Puranas, Taittiriya, or I think Taittiriya Upanishad, which was his favorite literature to read. And as he was reading, he had a beautiful look on his face, and his eyes were wide open, and his voice was very soft and sweet. And as he was speaking, all of a sudden there was a sound from the heavens, that a booming sound, that all glories to Sri Madhvacharya, great devotee of Lord Ram. And all glories to the preaching work that he had performed. All glories to Bhishma Dev, you who are an incarnation of Bhishma Dev. For it is by your preaching that this voidism and impersonalism, which was affecting the society in so many in ways, has been defeated. And as they were speaking like this, all of a sudden a shower of flowers came from the heavens. And the disciples were amazed. They were wondering, what does this mean? So as the flowers were building up, they finally covered over his head. And one of his intimate disciples came forward and brushed away the flowers and discovered that Srila Madhvacharya had left. And he writes that the demigods, customarily, they don't spend much time on earth after completing their missions, or when their celestial origins are revealed. So these great personalities who come to this world amongst us and who are engaged in wonderful preaching works, whether it be most recent in the case of Srila Prabhupada or these great acharyas of the past, they're not ordinary beings, and we're so fortunate to have their association. And so we can understand what the real truth is. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Otherwise, we'll end there. Actually, there's one very nice little bit of information. It's described that he still resides in Badrinath, and he's listening to Srila Vyasadeva speaking the Bhagavatam. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.